Greetings, Otaku Faithful. Thank you for joining me again this week. Once again, it's Larry Williams, OAW Commander-in-Chief, and I'm here to bring you yet again another Boardwalk Empire episode review right here on Otaku Assemble Weekly. As always, I'm here to bring you the latest in this week's Boardwalk Empire episode review. And this week episode, this is Season 2, Episode 8, entitled Two Boats and a Lifeguard. Now, I'm actually going to do this week's review in the manner in which I've done this week's Thundercats episode review, for any of you all who have seen that, where my focus for this week's review is going to be targeted more towards the themes of this week's episode. Now, there are two major themes that I want to address in this week's episode, and by addressing these themes, I will also let you all know about the major events in this week's episode. The first theme I want to discuss is the theme of morale and morality, because we have a few characters in this week's episode that we've seen both a shift in their morale and a shift in their morality. The first character I want to address is Agent Van Alden, good old Nelson, because there were two specific scenes in this week's episode where it seems like Nelson isn't exactly sticking to his honor code anymore. The first being the scene when he and his partner were eating at this restaurant, and the waiter lets them know that, hey, police officers eat free here. However, Agent Van Alden told him, we're federal agents, we're not police officers, so we're expected to pay. However, the waiter, he didn't care either way. And in this very brief conversation with his partner, Agent Van Alden, he displays this sort of this sense, this idea that what he thought was, black and white, cut and dry, right and wrong, it doesn't seem that way anymore. And his partner said the same thing. His partner said that he joined the Bureau believing that they were going to, protect people and save lives and things of that nature. However, are they really doing that? It's pretty damn difficult for them to enforce the prohibition law. And he's starting to see the effects of that. And so that scene ended with Agent Van Alden and his partner just leaving. Instead of paying the bill, they just left, And then the second scene is when Van Alden returns home, and he takes this money that he's been stashing, and he stashes it behind the mirror in his bedroom. Once again, Agent Van Alden isn't sticking to his honor code, his beliefs anymore. He's starting to act beyond those. So that's the first character that I want to discuss. The second character is going to be the character of Angela, who is Jimmy's wife. In this week's episode, we see Angela engage in another relationship with with a new female character. If you all will recall from last season, Angela did have this kind of, this girlfriend on the side type of deal. And there was a whole little story in that. And it appears that Angela is engaging in another relationship of that type. It's not as serious because we all know that her friendship in season 1, that was an older friendship. They had been friends for a while. This is kind of like a new spark. And so we're not sure exactly where that will lead to, but there is potential for something to blossom from that new relationship. And so once again, that topic of Angela's secrecy, her infidelity, is brought back to the surface. So once again, her morals come into question. Also, the scene when she has the conversation between her and Jimmy, when Jimmy admits to committing certain crimes to her. Once again, what her moral compass comes into question, because we know what she's doing on the side, but how could she really judge or condemn Jimmy for what he's doing when she's not in the right either? So once again, that comes up to question. And that's going to bring me to the third character that I want to bring up as far as the whole moral theme is concerned, and that's Jimmy. Because Jimmy's morals, let's face it, have been completely rattled all season long. And in last week's episode, they seem to have, in last week's episode and this week's episode, they seem to have hit their peak. The reason for that being is this, because Jimmy went ahead and he ordered the hit on Nucky. And I don't know if it was some type of attempt to alert Nucky to the situation, some kind of sly way of actually preventing Nucky from being killed. That's still on the fence, because we still don't know yet. However, Jimmy admits in this week's episode, in his conversation with Angela, where he says that he ordered the hit, but he didn't want to. And so Angela asks him, she says, but you went along with it anyway. And he didn't deny it. You see what I'm saying? Once again, his morals are conflicted. And then at the end of this episode, when Jimmy and his associates are having, the big party, because the big event in this week's episode was Nucky stepped down as treasurer, and he pretty much handed Atlantic City over to Jimmy and his faction. So of course, at the end of this episode, they're having a big party about it. But Jimmy's not in his right mind. He's not himself anymore. This whole, I think this is the episode where we're seeing the events of this entire season have their effect on Jimmy, because like I said, little by little it's been weighing in on him. It just seems like the pot's boiled over now, and this will lead to potential conflicts for Jimmy as this season continues. But wrapping up that theme, I want to get into the second theme of this week's episode, and what I believe is the most prominent theme in this week's episode, and that is the theme of fathers, because this theme comes up multiple times in the episode if you pay attention to it. The first is the scene with Nelson, when he hires the new midwife, if you will, the new house mother for his daughter Abigail, and she asks him, she says, you're not going to kiss Abigail goodbye? And so he kisses her goodbye, and as he's leaving, she tells the baby, Abigail, your father loves you very much. That was the first hint to this episode's theme. Okay, the second came with the news of Nucky and Eli's father's murder. I mean, not murder, excuse me, Larry, he wasn't murdered, he died, natural causes. Fuck's wrong with you, man? Dude, it's been a long fucking day, and so many people have kicked the bucket due to murder in this series. Can you blame me? Can you really blame me? Nah, but I could see these fucking weekly reviews are starting to, wear in on you, man. They're starting to take their toll. I can see it, dude. You need to take a fucking break. I'll take a break when the season is over. Don't fucking lecture me on taking a break. Okay, now that I'm done with that argument with my better half. Okay, so Nucky and Eli's father died. He's not murdered, he dies due to natural causes. And we get a pretty nice scene. Some nice little character development comes into play when Nucky attends his father's wake, and Eli's there, and they have the little conversation between those two. But once again, this is another episode that's bringing up, Nucky's feelings towards his father, Eli's feelings towards their father, and that sort of thing. Also, this is the first time that Nucky's broken down and cried. So once again, the theme of fathers is coming into play here. The third scene I would have to say is the scene in which Jimmy is at his father's house and he's meeting with his associate from Philadelphia, whose name I still cannot remember. And his associate, once again, the way in which he speaks to Jimmy, he always speaks to Jimmy as a boy, as his junior. You know, you're still a kid. You know, you're still a youngin, and he makes the claim about, oh, you know, Darmody, you owe me $5,000. However, look at this house. Look at, you know, your lavishings. This is that and the other. And what does Jimmy constantly tell him? My father's. This is my father's. That whole conversation between Jimmy and that character, that was in a way somewhat of a strike against Jimmy's character. It was an attack on his ability as his father's heir. You know, this idea that Jimmy has assumed this position and he's made these alliances and he's made these promises, but he's not really coming in good on those promises much either. This idea that, oh, well, if your father was in this position, he would have, so you're not adequately filling those shoes. That's what that was. And Jimmy's been putting up with that shit all season long. Now, the fourth scene in which that ties back into the whole father theme, I believe would have to be the scene in which Nucky, Margaret, and the two children are playing a board game. And when they tell him, Uncle Nucky, it's your turn, he tells them, I believe you need to start calling me Dad. And so, of course, little Ted, is it Teddy? Yeah, little Teddy. He says, well, it's your turn, Dad. So apparently Margaret's children are addressing Nucky as Dad now. Once again, tying into the father theme of this week's episode. But other than that, I think for the most part, I've gotten most of the big things out of the way, most of the episode's events. Once again, don't want to give out too much, because for those of you who have yet to see the episode, that's something for you to look forward to. Well, what can you look forward to? I'll let you know. Nucky's meeting with Rothstein and Torrio. That was a good scene. Nucky's conversation with Owen at the end of the episode. That was a good scene. And also, right before the meeting with Rothstein and Torrio, Nucky's conversation with one of the enlisted men at the Atlantic City Armory, because we're going to see that again in next week's episode. And then, of course, the scene that closed this week's episode, Nucky's conversation with Chalky, that's going to come up in next week's episode also. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to leave this review off with that. But just keep an eye out for those scenes. For those of you who haven't seen this episode yet, pretty important stuff. But just like I said, once again, just for the sake of giving you all something to look forward to, I'll leave those out of this review. But with that said, I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up. This has been Larry Williams, OAW Commander-in-Chief. I'm signing off, and until next time, peace.